A 5-minute calls, 1 minute bell. Jackie Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I suspect that the proprietors of Christ College are watching this debate this afternoon from perhaps the staff room, and as indeed possibly the senior students of Christ's College, and if that is the case, then I send them the greetings of Parliament, and particularly those of the member in charge of this bill, Nicky Wagner, who gave a very good opening speech in introducing this bill. And I guess those proprietors and staff and pupils of Christ College will be utterly bemused by the quality of the previous contribution to this debate, where the politics of jealousy and the politics of sour grapes were on display for all to see. And Mr. Speaker, I think that this bill, the Christ's College Canterbury Amendment Bill, deserves better than that in this Parliament, and that is what is intended to be delivered from this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, the bill is being sent to the Government Administration Select Committee, which is an excellent select committee, who will give due consideration to the matters raised by both Nicky Wagner and the opposition member who made a poor contribution to this bill. And in particular, if I do turn to subsection 4, which specifies the circumstances in which property may be applied for other purposes under new subsection 3. And if I just go through those circumstances, and the first one is the purposes for which the property was given or vested have become wholly or in part redundant, uncertain as to application, or impractical to implement. Now, Mr. Speaker, when this bill does go to the Government Administration Select Committee, we will be very interested in what is meant by that. But I think probably if I can refer back to my excellent colleague's speech, where she does note that there are some examples of the purposes of bequests becoming redundant, such as funding for sons of soldiers who had suffered or fallen during the First and Second World Wars. And it's worth remembering that this is a school with a very proud history of sons of the school going off and fighting in the First and Second World Wars. Now, there aren't any, I suspect, sons of soldiers currently or will ever be at the school, so therefore the purpose of that bequest has become well and truly redundant. Now, the member opposite is saying, what about a minor amendment, thus showing the fact that he hasn't even bothered to read the general policy statement on the bill, which does point out that any proposed amendments can be taken by the trustees to the High Court for High Court approval. But given the nature of the number of trusts with which this school operates, the trustees would be forced to approach the High Court on multiple occasions. Now, that simply is costly. It doesn't particularly, $50,000, thank you, is the cost. I would rather see, my colleagues would rather see that money spent on educating the boys at Christ's College. So I'm sorry the member opposite has shown such a poor grasp of this bill, but I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that the Government Administration Select Committee will be asking what it is that in the clause 4 of this bill, new subsection 4 of this bill, what it does apply to in particular. And I've given one example, funding for sons of soldiers, but also there are other circumstances noted by my excellent colleague Nicky Wagner, who is the promoter of this bill, and rightly so, for students from Christchurch orphanages which no longer exist. Now, if the orphanage doesn't exist any longer, then the bequest then becomes unusable. So what is the point of having funds accumulating in the coffers of Christ College without any use for them? So, Mr. Speaker, I look forward, as the Deputy Chair of the Government Administration Committee, to having a good discussion, a good examination of this bill, and I am confident that, notwithstanding the politics of envy and jealousy and sour grapes displayed by members opposite, we will return this bill to the House with due consideration. Thank you.
Brendan Burns.
Thank you. I'm pleased to rise and support the introduction of the Christ College Canterbury Amendment Bill. As my colleague Trevor Mallard has indicated, the Labor opposition is quite prepared to see this bill go to the Government